one of the most important unanswered questions about Biden presidency is how he would do triage. What issues would he prioritize? As you saw in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, Republicans first went to repeal Obamacare and failed, and then ultimately succeeded in passing tax cuts at the end of 2017. That was really all that they could muster in terms of a legislative agenda. So given how sweeping Biden's agenda is, it's going to be very crowded. He can't do everything. So healthcare, for example, that's a huge long-term fight. If they really want to implement a public option, I think that's going to crowd out the rest of the agenda. And, you know, Biden has spoken to 4 different crises that he wants to solve: economic, public health, racial, and environmental. You know, can he get to the climate agenda at the same time as pursuing a public option? And if he does it, I think that, you know, completely crowds out his ability to do what I think is ultimately his first act as president, which is pursue a very broad economic package, which I think is a mix of tax increases, tax cuts for lower and middle income individuals, although he hasn't proposed those explicitly. I think it's noteworthy that Kamala Harris's signature proposal when she was running for president was known as the LIFT Act, which is a $3 trillion, essentially a tax credit for low and middle income individuals. So maybe she does have some influence in that respect. But I think Biden is going to be focused on that core economic package of tax increases, tax cuts, and the labor agenda, which is, you know, an expansion of unionization and an increase in the minimum wage. So I think that's where he goes first, and I think that that's going to crowd out the conversation over healthcare. But I think that the healthcare will probably be the tier 2 issue. Then I think that they will end up pursuing the public option.
And pushing out climate change entirely as anything to be dealt with during the administration really dashed the hopes of investors who were hoping that green energy, solar, et cetera, would find a place in the portfolio under a Biden presidency. But Don, I wanted to ask you, I mean, Harris was sort of a sigh of relief because she was more moderate compared to some of the other candidates who could have been vice president. But now the next question for the markets is, does Elizabeth Warren, for instance, have a place as Treasury Secretary? What are sort of the key spots that you're watching and sort of the candidates that you're watching from an investor standpoint that would have the most impact on the markets?
Yeah, I think Treasury Secretary would absolutely be one, and I think Warren is a good candidate for that. You know, looking at bank regulations and then just broader impact on economic policy. I think another interesting one would be what happens at the DOJ and the FTC. Biden has been relatively silent on tech issues. He's only been primarily concerned with Section 230 liability issues. But there's a much broader conversation about antitrust happening. So I think that, you know, I don't know who may be picked at the DOJ in the antitrust, but I think that pick matters a great deal. And then, you know, I should say on trade, those issues matter, too. You know, whereas Trump has been focused on issues such as the trade deficit with China, I think a Biden administration can take a different angle. They've been much more focused on issues such as human rights, labor, and climate. You know, Biden, for example, has proposed levying carbon fees on countries who don't live up to their Paris Agreement commitments. So I think that on the trade perspective, that's another angle that investors need to consider as well.
Okay, Don. So right now, you're an expert. Is the Senate likely to flip, and is the White House likely to flip where we are right now? I mean, I think Nate Silver's at 70 or I don't know, 70+% for that. And is it going to be the same? And the reason I ask that is because last time around, we just didn't know. Once the people actually went into the voting booth, we didn't know. We don't know what's really happening until it happens. And 4 years ago, we had no idea how that was going to happen. Could we be in the same position right now where these polls are not correct? Or could they change between now and the election? You think it's going to be a Biden presidency with a Democratic Senate?
I think that's the most likely outcome. You know, Biden has a substantial lead now. We expect that to narrow a bit going forward. But I don't think that the polls are off to the same degree that they were last time. When you look at, say, Biden's lead nationally and then compare it to swing states, that margin between his lead and overall in the swing states is consistent with the actual results of the election. So, you know, we've run an exercise at Cornerstone Macro looking at polls in the different swing states and to what degree that they were off in 2016 and to what degree that bias has been corrected for. And when you look at the swing states broadly, I think they're much more accurate this time. And I think it's right now, at least where we are, it is showing a Biden win as the most likely outcome. As for the Senate, I think more likely than not, so goes the presidency, so goes the Senate. There's probably a 2/3 chance that if Biden wins the presidency, he's taking the Senate. But, the betting markets disagree. They're effectively saying that there's a 100% chance that if Biden wins the presidency, they're taking the Senate. I think that's where we would disagree. There is a chance that Republicans hold on, even if they lose the White House.